Hello everyone, this is Martin and I'm going to start a new little mini series around OWASP Top 10 LLM in 2025. So I got a lot of feedback from people who said like, hey, can you do like a high level overview of these different categories, and um, they are all out there on the web, right? Like you could read the whole document and things, but I try to explain it in practical terms. So what is OWASP Top 10 LLM 2025? And we do like a couple of little videos like this one here in order to talk about it. So we start today with LLM number 1, which is prompt injection. So what is prompt injection and why prompt injection is one of the most critical vulnerabilities when it comes to AI and LLM systems? So the textbook definition of prompt injection is relatively straightforward. It's basically untrusted user input, or this is how I word it, untrusted user input enters the LLM, right? And that's basically it. Like untrusted user input enters the LLM, right? So we differentiate. So there's a variety of prompt injections, right? Like the first one I want to talk about real quick is direct prompt injection. So direct prompt injection means, it's very easy to understand, when you, as a user, for example, enter the prompt directly into a chatbot, for example, right? Or via an API or any of the other possibilities. So this requires user interaction. Like if I'm the malicious user, for example, and I'm on a chatbot of a retailer, for example, then I can perform direct prompt injection. So typically text in chatbots, API calls where the prompt is user controllable, for example. But you also need to think about stuff like, for example, invisible prompt injection, right? And this is very common these days, that you can, for example, use so-called ASCII Unicode tags in order to pull off prompt injections. And there is tools out there basically where you can convert a prompt, right? Like, or your instructions, and it will then traverse them to ASCII Unicode, and then you paste them into the LLM, and it's not visible to the human, right? But the LLM will then decode them and act on them. The same goes for ANSI characters or even emojis, right? So this is anything which you can input is or has a potential for prompt injection. Now, the next category is indirect prompt injection, and this is a lot more dangerous than direct prompt injection, because indirect prompt injection means the LLM is going out somewhere and is fetching content, right? And so this could be any document, right? Like if you look at ChatGPT, if you look at, like Microsoft Copilot and things like this, they all have the possibility to link your drive, right? Like for example, G Drive, and on an organizational level even, and then it can basically take documents, or it can ingest documents, and these documents could have a prompt injection embedded in those documents, right? Another example here is to a website, like go out to xyz.com and summarize the content for me. And if then xyz.com has a prompt injection, right, on that website, the LLM may fall victim to that prompt injection. The same goes for source code, for example, right? Like think of tools like Copilot, GitHub Copilot, or something like this. Think of Cursor, think of these different coding assistants or coding AI bots. And if there's a prompt injection in the code, in the source code on a GitHub repo, for example, then it may be vulnerable to prompt injection, right? But it doesn't stop there. It's also multimedia content, like images. So images can have prompts embedded. Like again, you can use like steganography. The prompt can be hidden, for example, in a very small font, or white on white background, or in plain sight, right? Like there's numerous ways, and the same applies to emails. For example, or well, let's do videos first. Videos, right? YouTube video, and you say like, go out to this YouTube video, transcribe it, And if there is a spoken text, for example, it may fall victim to prompt injection as well. Moving on, like emails, for example. So very often you have the possibility that your LLM, your corporate LLM, can read your emails or can act on your emails, can summarize your emails. Some of them can even send emails, delete emails. And this is a very dangerous injection vector because, emails are not that easy to be controlled. Like, yes, Google and stuff, they have their malware scanners and things like this for attachments, but this is in plain text, right? Like, so I'm just sending a text which says important new instructions, and then it ends up in a user's email, and then there's an AI bot which summarizes that email, so you could potentially pull off a prompt injection here as well. Invisible prompts, as we already discussed, are also applicable to indirect prompt injection, so that they are very difficult to spot as well. Data exfiltration via indirect prompt injection. So this is then basically that you make the LLM do something, right? Like, for example, you put a prompt in there, like either indirect or direct, and then it will exfiltrate the chat history, right? And will append the query in as a query parameter, and also very dangerous. And then you can exfiltrate confidential info potentially. I have a couple of YouTube videos on that as well. The next one is jailbreaking. So jailbreaking is effectively getting information from the model which you shouldn't get. Like you can jailbreak it, for example, to give you a recipe to produce illegal substances, or how to produce a bomb, or how to produce XYZ and stuff. And this is jailbreaking. So you basically throw it off its guardrails, right? Memory manipulation is another one you can do, and which is very, very dangerous. So a lot of these LLMs out there, they have the memory feature to keep track of context, right? Like if you come back tomorrow or the week after and you're working on a coding project, it has the context already around this. So you can customize this, like it should always respond in a certain tone, or you are a coder, so it knows you're a coder and stuff. And if an outsider can manipulate those memories, like you can make it delete the memories, you can inject false memories and all these kind of things. Multimodal prompt injection, so we already talked about that. That is basically anything other than text, right? So this is like images or voice or video, for example, injected that way. And then multi-chain prompt injection is a hot topic as well. Like in corporate environments, you now have often like multiple LLMs, and the output of LLM01 serves as the input of LLM2, and the output of LLM2 serves as input of LLM3, and then some APIs are called or something, right? And by crafting the prompt, the first LLM may not be vulnerable, right? But further down the line, depending on what the output generated by the first LLM is, that could lead to a prompt injection on a second or third or fourth LLM. And that's what's basically multi-chain prompt injection, right? Here's an example. So you can see this is one of those video prompt injections. So you would simply say like, hey, summarize that YouTube video for me, right? And this is an old screenshot. Like a lot of the stuff these days doesn't use plugins anymore, doesn't require plugins, so it's actually built in. And then it would transcribe this, right? And this applies to Google or Gemini or any of the others as well. And if there is a prompt injection in this video somewhere, and this can be as text, this can be as voice, this can be as a video frame or something like this. And then what happens basically is it says AI injection succeeded. So it was the prompt told it to print this. And then I'm Genie, and here's a joke for you. And why don't scientists trust atoms, for example, right? Like, or whatever you wanted to do. But this is a classic example that it fell for the prompt injection because it was supposed to summarize this, and then all of a sudden it's diverting away from the original task. Now, what you can do about prompt injection, or to mitigate it to a certain extent. So first and foremost, it's difficult to completely eliminate it. So there's no solution at the moment to really eliminate it altogether, but you can make it harder, right? And one thing is input sanitization and input filtering. So on the data which is actually entering the LLM, right? One of those things which springs to mind is don't make the prompt in certain applications user controllable. Like if there's a summarization bot, for example, then, and the user is only supposed to click to summarize something, then that API call or the prompt should not be user controllable. That should then be on the backend side, right? For example. You should do contextual escaping and segmentation. Like you can isolate the prompt, right? Like where the user prompt is actually ending up in. And there's various techniques to harden this. So it's called prompt hardening. And this is something that it aims at not being able to override the system prompt itself, right? Sandboxing techniques and a few other things exist here as well. Guardrails, like having guardrails before the data enters the LLM or leaves the LLM. So input and output is always important. And fine-tuning those, so feeding those guardrails with a lot of adversarial data sets and making sure that these guardrails actually are trained and kept up to date, right? Like because prompt injection last year doesn't equal prompt injection this year, for example. And there's a lot of like NVIDIA and stuff. There's a lot of free guardrails on GitHub, which you can download and you can use those and build on them, right? Like this is an ongoing process, by the way. Human in the loop oversight. So very important that if you have the LLM doing critical functionality, have some human oversight. Like for example, don't let the LLM do refunds on its own, or cancel flight tickets on its own and things like this. So anything which is like high financial impact or high business impact, there should be a human in the loop and some oversight. And then also important, like least privileges and output constraints. So always configure your LLM to its purpose, right? Like what does it need to know? It should have least privileges. The LLM should not have excessive capabilities into other systems or into its own server set and stuff like that. So this comes more from the application security background here, but this is very important on LLMs as well. And that's LLM number 1. That's LLM1 prompt injection. And I look forward to see you in the next video. Thank you.